online, and as well, Vice Mayor Fernandez did express his intent to log in via Zoom.
Excellent, excellent. With that being said, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And thank you, Councilman Garcia, for joining us. And I know I'm going to drop this on you right away, but if you can lead us in the moment of silence and the pledge, I would appreciate it to kick off the meeting.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for remaining standing. Councilman Garcia, the moment of silence for the prayer, if you'd like.
Just a quick moment of silence for the victims today of the school shooting and the innocents who lost their lives today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I know in just keeping with the regular order that we've done before, we have not traditionally had public comments, but if there's anybody in the public that wants to get up, this is more informal. This is a workshop for information. I don't see anybody present, but if somebody's online and would like to chime in, that would be great. I do also want to recognize Councilwoman Ruano and Councilman Morera for joining us as well. They're online. If you guys want to give any opening remarks, and I'll extend the same courtesy to Councilman Garcia prior to the workshop, you're more than welcome to jump in at any time.
Thank you for the recognition, Councilman Collazo. I have no comments at this time. Just looking forward to hearing about this.
Councilwoman?
Thank you so much. Thank you to staff for putting together this presentation. I'm looking forward to learning a lot this evening.
Councilman Garcia, any opening remarks?
Yeah, I want to thank the staff as well. Again, I got into local government so we could have a say in what happens to us locally. And when, you know, outside forces, even people that we respect, you know, pass laws that infringe on our rights as local officials who are closer to the people to make decisions, it causes an undue burden on all of us. So this is a great opportunity for us and the public to learn a little bit more. Act affects us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman Garcia, and also want to recognize that Councilman-elect is here, and you know, thank you so much, JC, for participating not just in this process, but I think I see you here more at Town Hall than I've ever seen you in anything, and that's really shows the testament of your leadership and how you're embracing this opportunity. I do want to start off with some opening remarks. You know, this item, which was something that I think weighed on all of us. I'm not going to take credit for being the only one that sponsored this item. I'm pretty sure everybody kind of saw and heard about Live Local. The one thing that resonated to me was when I started seeing what's happening in our sister cities and local communities, and the comments that Councilman Garcia just made resonate with me. Seeing what Bal Harbour has had to do, because all of a sudden they're thrusted into a position where they have no say over the development of these properties, and how they're being utilized, and really the only premise of this is for us to be informed as decision makers. Myself and Councilwoman Morano are not going to be here, right, as well as another individual on this dais. We're not going to inherit this. This is something that you guys are going to have to carry the torch with. So I felt it was very important for an educational perspective for us to get feedback from staff, to understand what the lay of the land is, right, what's happening in our sister communities, be it Bal Harbour, Doral, what's been happening in Wynwood, and realizing what's happening as far as litigation goes moving forward, right? We know that some of these matters are being litigated and might be even taken to the Supreme Court. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and give the floor over to staff, and we're all ears to see how this legislation impacts us and what we can do to be better prepared for the future. So thank you.
Well, first I want to thank you all for coming, and sorry, microphone noise. Susana Alonso for the Planning Department, and I want to give a giant shout out to my intern for the summer, the wonderful Megan Casal, who helped make this presentation and is responsible for all the graphics. And as you will see, It's worth a watch. It's a little longer and it has a little more information and background than you're used to, but it's worth the trip. Hold on, let me figure out the. There you go. First, we're going to go through some planning. Why do we plan, right? Why is it important to plan? Why is it important to do what we do? Planning has been getting, and planning, especially zoning, has been getting a really bad rep in social media lately. Is the fault of all the housing crises is the zoning laws. I mean, this is what you hear everywhere lately. It couldn't be any further from the truth, in my opinion. As a planner, I've been doing this for quite a while. I don't want to date myself, but upwards of 20 years. And I can tell you that I've been in the front row of housing crises in those 20 years, and none of them were caused by plan. No, none of them were caused by zoning. They were caused by greed and mismanagement and other things, but not zoning. We go through a few of the zoning. You're all gotten this story from me when you started as council. Why do we do the things we do, right? What is zoning? Zoning is about deciding what goes where. We need to decide, just like when you plan out a house, you need to choose where the bathroom goes, where the bedroom go, where you're gonna eat and where you're gonna cook, because you can't cook in the place where you go to the bathroom. This is basics. And the same thing we have to do with planning the space of our cities. We need to decide where we eat, where we do things like industrial, or where we reside and where we do commercial. And there's reasons why we separate these things. I'm sure you all remember, you weren't alive, but you remember reading stories about the 1900s and the Industrial Revolution and what was happening at the time, where people were living next to the factories and they were getting sick and breathing soot. And that's the reason that zoning began. So the separation of particularly industrial and residential uses was the generating factor of zoning in the United States and throughout the world. You're all familiar with the future land use map and the zoning map. One of them is who we want to be when we grow up, and the other one is the way we get there. These two maps are what control what happens in each area. The future land use map is this one. This is the one that basically controls where we want to go as a community. If you see the purple areas are the ones that are designated for future use as industrial. There's a little bit of mistake on that one previously because there's a portion that has been rezoned, but this was corrected. This is the zoning map, which has to be compliant with the previous map. And again, all the purple is the areas that are allowed for industrial uses. Again, why do we plan? Because it helps us do a lot of things. It helps us save money because of our infrastructure. It helps us create a sense of place because it helps us create harmonious environmental and aesthetic elements in the community. It helps us protect and enhance property values. It improves our quality of life. It promotes public safety. It increases accessibility and opportunity. It provides public facilities and infrastructure and protects the environment. And when we reach situations like the one that we have right now with Live Local and how it affects the town particularly, because yes, I'm very concerned about what's happening in other communities, but at the end of the day, what I'm really, really concerned about is what could potentially happen here because of Live Local. As you saw on the zoning map, we have a lot of purple, and Live Local affects particularly the purple areas, the industrial areas. The history of Live Local is a history of affordable housing. There's been a big outcry in the last few years, especially since COVID, about the availability of affordable housing, particularly in Florida and very particularly in South Florida. The housing prices in South Florida have skyrocketed, even twice at the growth of the state. And obviously, yes, we do have an issue with affordable housing. We have an issue with the availability of housing in general, but very particularly affordable housing. Affordable housing is defined as housing units that are cost no more than 30% of the income of the dweller, right? So of the person that lives in it. So affordable housing to you is not the same as affordable housing to me, and is not the same as affordable housing to somebody else, which is why it's divided into the income limits. And these incomes are per area median income. And these are defined by statute in the state of Florida. So an extremely low income is 27,000-ish, very low income 45 and below, low income 72, and moderate income 108. I'm pretty sure that most of us fall within many of these. There's no, these are teachers, firefighters, police officers, certainly business owners, certainly the Live Local Act, what does is that it authorizes multifamily and mixed-use residential properties to develop themselves as long as they devote 40% of the property units are classified as affordable. How the Live Local Act defines affordable is not necessarily super clear. They're very fussy about it. They're sort of defining it as defined elsewhere in the statute and la la la. So that already is leaving a lot of room for guess games. And then, but it does give the developer a lot of advantages, or a lot of, advantages, to put it another way. They're no longer required to obtain site plan approvals. They can skip a lot of the, and Lorenzo's gonna go through the details about this a little bit deeper. But they're allowed to skip some of the fees that they're required to pay. We are required to provide permits a lot faster than we're used to. Our time to review the application is much shortened, and they get to have the biggest density and the highest height and the highest density allowed within a mile. And the most difficult part of it all is that they don't have any limitations on what kind of land use they can build on. So currently, residential has to go on residential land. If you're building residential on a commercial lot, on a red area, on a business district, you have to provide commercial in the ground floor, and you can build above it. But in industrial land, residential is strictly prohibited, because one of the purposes of zoning is to divide industrial from residential. Under Live Local, as long as you're providing 40% affordable housing, you can build residential in industrial lands. Why is this a big problem?
Right, real quick, and this is a question before we get too much in the weeds, and it's just my thought process. Affordable housing, depending on who you ask, has a lot of different definitions, right?
Correct.
There's a federal standard for what affordable housing is through
Correct.
HUD. Affordable housing, depending on the municipality or where you live, there's different rent assist programs, different types of subsidized housing. And I know that you spoke to this particular issue. It's not codified in the statute at all?
It's referred to from another place in the statute. So no, not in the Live Local statute, they don't define it. They define it by reference to another section of the statute, which is where they discuss 30% of the area median income, which in the case of Miami-Dade County could be $108,000.
So in this particular case, a developer would have to, I guess, be transparent with their rent rolls,
Thank you.
right? They would have to disclose. So in
Yes.
the
And how
Live
are they
Local
picking-
Act,
yes.
even though we would not have the ability to go into that, does that mean that then the municipality is the one that's then,
All good questions. It's not specified. The bill doesn't specify who regulates.
is that something that we would then, one of the things that we're considering here is adopting Live Local language, right?
Correct.
Into an ordinance that allows us to manage that, right? And is that something that, well, I'll wait till Lorenzo gets his part of the presentation.
These are all great questions for how do we
Got it.
protect ourselves?
Got it,
But
got
yes,
it.
but these are all the questions, right, that we all have.
Sure.
They are not necessarily answered when you read the statute. And
Understood.
that's how it gets, right, that's the fuzzies, right?
Understood. Thank
Right.
you.
Again,
Just a quick question, when we say industrial, right? Is there any regard for environmental cleanup
No.
issues? Well, I mean.
no, sir.
there are other laws put in place that will counteract this. You're not allowed to build unless you remediate any type of, for example.
There's no mention of such things in this, there's no mention of such things in the Live Local Act that I have found about remediation of brownfields. Obviously, it's mentioned elsewhere on the statute, and I would imagine that that still stands.
Sure.
But it's not directly addressed as, maybe if the field happens to be a brownfield because there was a nasty use before that and you're trying to convert it, it's not specified like that. though.
Suzanne, are you aware of any, especially in Business Park East, because it's a majority of that, I don't, down in Commerce Way there isn't, but any industrial uses that could be, would need remediation in the future? Because is there any manufacturing besides, I think there's some plastic manufacturing that Cordis does, right? When they put together.
We have a couple of places that have manufacturing. We have a plant that manufactures glue products.
Okay,
We have a plant that manufactures vitamins, and
Yeah.
So we have several manufacturing facilities in town. Actually, we have a lot of manufacturing.
sure, but it's not.
I don't know that they've been well monitored throughout, so I don't know that they have any leftovers and maybe, do you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah, yeah, okay.
However, do you really want to build residential either adjacent or on that site? I would be very skeptical. I would be very concerned, especially if you're building residential with less, basically for people that have less options.
Mhm.
Because when you're talking about affordable housing, you're literally talking about people who maybe this is their only choice of housing.
Well, that's something to put aside
But-
when we talk about our local ordinances, remediation, because remediation is costly,
Correct.
and that might be something that, we can put in our ordinance that add to a next step that they must take.
I like.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things that Live Local does is basically expedite their permit approval process and much faster. So from what usually is at least a 6-month process for permit, site plan approval, permitting, and the such, they reduce that sometimes to 45 to 30 days, depending on the process. And we have less choices to say no to things. We get a lot less supervision and a lot less regulatory authority over what's happening in the site. As long as they're meeting those requirements, it's an administrative approval, there's not gonna be any town council hearings, there's not gonna be any discussion in public forums.
One more thing, I'm sorry, and I'll let you continue. Although in the east side, there are limitations by the FAA on the size of the buildings as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm curious as to how that, and many of those are industrial properties that, how would that work, right? Curious. And I don't have to tell you all this, but Megan did such a beautiful job that I wanted to include this portion. Why do we thrive, right? We know why we thrive. We know why we're proud of our community. We're proud because we've been using comprehensive planning from the very beginning. It's a planned community that has been, we've been separating land zones. We've been looking for parks within places. We've been looking for large parks when we needed them. We obviously have water bodies and beautiful places, and people come and take pictures everywhere. And we try really hard to have a local living, small town feeling with all the gorgeousness that we have. And we're working on our transportation improvements and our transit, and this is where we get to Lorenzo's portion, now that he knows what he has to preserve.
Thank you.
No pressure.
Okay, I think we're gonna switch gears.
I want to
the
give the
next-
opportunity as well, now that, Susanna, you're done with your part of the presentation, if the people online have any questions, I know Councilman Garcia and myself have kind of just jumped in, but Councilman Morera, Councilwoman Morano, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in, but Lorenzo's going to get started with his portion of the presentation if there are no questions.
I appreciate the recognition. I don't have any questions as of just yet. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you for the recognition. I had one brief question, and I'm not sure if it's actually going to be addressed now in Lorenzo's portion. And I'm actually pulling into the parking lot of Town Hall right now. But it's Susanna mentioned earlier that we were actually under the state law now prevented from charging certain fees. I'm actually curious if within those fees is impact fees, because one of the things I see is with a lot of these industrial properties, the level of service that is prepared for that area is, for usually supply trucks, vendor trucks, et cetera, a small number of them coming in and out throughout the day, making deliveries, taking orders, et cetera. As opposed to once you add a residential element, that is a far heavier traffic flow that demands a completely different level of service, which my understanding is ordinarily at that point, we would assess impact fees. Are we prevented now from doing that?
You're hitting the nail exactly on the head. That's precisely the issue. First, yes, we are prevented from collecting many of the impact fees, including fire, and they're exempt. Once they're providing affordable housing, they're exempt from impact fees. And not only that, but yes, as you well understand, as you have explained, if we were to rezone these areas for residential use, the first thing that we would require, and I know that we're going through that lately, is that first that the roads be adapted for residential use. So sometimes that means increased signalization, additional driveways inserted, sometimes sidewalks are made larger or smaller, or trees added, and there's always things that you have to do to an area to turn it into a residential area, right? This is it's not even contemplated on the law. And not only is not contemplated for the developer to have to do it, we don't even get the impact fees to be able to do it ourselves. So we're basically having to contend with a much lesser quality of housing than we would like to have as the stock of housing in Miami Lakes. So yes.
Thank you for that.
So your answer is yes.
In 2 seconds.
Before you get started, Lorenzo, we're going to go ahead and wait for his arrival, which is literally right now. Yes, Town Attorney. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Collazo, Councilman Morera, Councilman Garcia, Councilwoman Rano, Town Clerk, and Susie. Thank you for working with me on this project. And JC, thank you for being here. You too, Victoria. And you too, Doc. So the presentation that I'm going to give is a little bit talking about Florida Live Local Act. Florida Live Local Act, as Susanna alluded to, really is born out of this need for affordable housing, more specifically workforce housing, okay? Workforce housing is that of your folks that work in Publix, folks that are teachers, folks that are police officers, people that are from low to what is now middle. Middle wasn't really contemplated that much in the original bill, but it is now in the 2024, and I'll talk about that a little bit further along. What it does and how it forwards or it moves the needle of affordable housing, or let's call it workforce housing, is by allowing developers who spot areas that are industrial or commercial and want to redevelop those into residential, to allow them to do so, provided that they afford for at least 40% residential units in that particular building to be allocated as workforce housing. And they have to proffer a covenant that they will continue to be workforce housing for a period of 30 years. Okay, so that is the give and take. The give is, well, developer, you're allowed to go ahead and take this property that's industrial or that's commercial, and you're allowed to redevelop it, and you're allowed to use the max height, and you're allowed to use the max FAR, which is Florida Area Ratio, and maximize all the uses that you want there. But you've got to make sure that 40% of the residential units there are, again, for workforce housing. Now, workforce housing is defined in Florida Statute 420.00004. And the way that it is defined in Florida law is that affordable means monthly rents or monthly mortgage payments, including taxes, insurance, and utilities, that do not exceed 30% of the amounts which represent the median adjusted gross income of the person. And now what that is it depends on whether that person is classified as low income or moderate income. Low income, for instance, is a family whose adjusted gross household income is one that does not exceed 80% of the median annual adjusted gross income for households within the state. Moderate income persons are those which are less than 120% of the median annual adjusted gross income for households within the state. And as Susie alluded to, that could be household income that are in the six figures in some cases. So that's something that could be concerning. It depends on how you look at it, because really when you're taking a look at a household maybe that is a police officer and a teacher, you could see it exceeding six figures, and that being something that's practical.
How
So-
is that, and again, I'm going to ask you the same question, and who carries the burden to, I guess, monitor? Or a developer comes
Yeah.
in, develops, and they've done market rate. We've never seen this product before.
Right.
They're not a specialist in this, but they said, well, then we can get much more better utilization. We've identified an area, and now they want to come in and who holds the developer accountable to those numbers?
Well, the municipality is required to hold them accountable to those numbers and to be able to provide them credits. They have to proffer documents. They have to provide proffer evidence to the municipality that shows that those units that they're going to be putting there are in fact workforce housing under the definition of the statute.
So the municipality has now, I guess, oversight role in something that
Burden.
a burden, right? Yeah,
I think it's a word.
without, I
That's
guess,
a good word.
without, I guess, an infrastructure. They're not paying fees for this, right? They're also being waived the impact fees. Can those fees be recaptured?
No, and it gets a little bit worse. Part of the benefit that persons have, and it's further along, but I think it's a good point to bring this up, is that some of these affordable housing units get tax breaks, and the municipality, the town of Miami Lakes, could lose out on capturing the full property taxes on those units that are specifically workforce housing. They get almost a full ad valorem break on those units. So it's actually the municipality can lose money on those additional units while having to provide additional services to account for additional persons that are going to be living in these new areas. So that's something that is happened, and recently it was even further expanded in 2024 in what was called the Glitch Bill. And my understanding is that this item is going to be revisited once again in this coming legislative cycle.
If I understood, and I was looking to see if the portion of the statute defining affordable housing or workforce housing was here, but I heard how you said it, I heard it before. If I understand it correctly, it's a person-by-person thing. It's 30% of the person's income.
Correct.
How does a developer show up before a building is built and say the rent is going to be 30% of a mythological tenant?
Right, because it's not completely mythological. I don't have the number exactly in front of me, but it's based on numbers that are captured by the state of Florida as far as this is what the median income is.
So is it median income of an area, or is it of an individual? Because the way I hear it in the statute itself, in the quoted language of the statute, it almost sounds like it's at an individual basis, meaning
No.
you could have two units, one right next to each other. One is affordable, the other's not, even though they have the same exact rent amount.
Right,
depending
but
on the
it
income
is
of
based on the
tenant.
median income of the area.
Okay, so it's
Right.
the income of the
Right.
area. Okay.
And then the individuals have to prove that they fall, the individual applying for that, and then what is this process of application? It's not clear, But the individuals applying for these units have to prove that they fall within that medium income of the area.
It's in the area of the state, so I'll read it exactly verbatim. They're all more or less the same. I'll read the one for low-income persons, right? For low-income persons, and so you can follow and look at the statute, Councilman, it's statute 420.0004. And it's, I'm looking at number 11, paragraph 11. Low-income persons means one or more natural persons or a family, the total annual adjusted gross household income of which does not exceed 80% of the median annual adjusted gross income for households within the state, comma, or 80% of the median annual adjusted gross income for households within the metropolitan statistical area, or if not within an MSA, metropolitan statistical area, within the county in which the person or family resides, whichever is greater. So it affords.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
This makes a lot of sense to me. It's very similar to what the Internal Revenue Service does with the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. The subsidies that individuals receive for their health insurance premiums is based on a percentage of the median income, and it's a national average, right? So in that case, it's embedded into our software and it's one number for the entire country. Here, is that number going to change based on the locality?
It can.
Or is it going to be a state-generated number and it's just going to be the percentage of the median household income for the state?
So what it says is that it's based on, and that's what a great question, does not exceed 80% of the median annual income for households within the state or within the metropolitan statistical area, or if not within that statistical area, within the county in which the family resides, whichever is greater. So that's what.
Whichever is greater.
Yeah.
So the oversight of this, and I guess my concern is the same as that of my colleagues, the oversight of this, these, let's say they're rental communities, right? And these leases are going to be generated every year and the tenants are going to change over. Like, how the oversight of this just seems like a nightmare to me.
It is. You're absolutely 100% right. It's very similar to the type of oversight that sometimes we as a municipality have to have over conditional uses, where we allow a person to be able to use something for a specific use where otherwise it wouldn't be allowed. We have to go back and check, their licenses checked, make sure that they're complying. For instance, a school where we only require and allow them to for a particular use, but restrict the amount of students that they can have. The only way that we know that they're complying with that conditional use is by doing some type of annual audit to make sure that they're complying. Similarly, this would be a similar case. And then the issue also is what kind of tools or mechanisms are at our disposal to be able to enforce these provisions once a permit has already been provided and once that building has already been erected and you have now market housing. And what I think makes the matter worse, it gets worse, is that in 2024, with this glitch bill, it was that originally the units had to be rentals. But with the 2024 changes in the statute, now you can sell these market rate homes. So now you'll have owners that'll own these condominium units. You could have the workforce housing portion that maybe is no longer being fully enforced. And now you have individual property owners in these buildings that are going to have a right. So how do you shut them down? How do you how do you enforce that against them and specifically?
No, that's after 30
so
years?
It's
After 30 years. Is that
well, they have to maintain the workforce housing aspect for a 30-year period.
Question I have for you is do we have any say on if they're for rent or for purchase?
No.
So the developer is the only one that can say.
Yes, the only thing that we have a say in is to make sure that the percentage of the property that's being used, that it's 40% of the actual development is being used for workforce housing. And that it's a mixed use.
Best case scenario, we can, I guess, control the initial tenant, but I don't see a way in which we can audit this on a year-to-year basis. And I mean, as these properties come online, right? Let's say that for argument's sake, we have 10 of these buildings that come online, and there's just no way for us to audit them every year to make sure that they're still in compliance. There's no mechanism for us to I guess, have a fee to impose on these, let's say they're rental units, a fee to impose on the landlord for this audit?
No, there's not.
Right, if there isn't, then this is just, the state in its infinite wisdom has just created some form of bypass to, create all these rules that they know cannot be enforced and create all of these specifications that they know no one's ever going to pay attention to just allow for development to happen everywhere with no oversight.
You hit the nail on the head, Councilwoman. That's one of the main problems, and that's why this has become such a big issue across the state, especially in South Florida, where you have very dense and concentrated populations, and you have variations between one municipality and another as far as their character and as far as areas of high single-family homes, and then you switch over to maybe the next municipality. I'm not going to name any names, and you find just crossing over the border, you find a lot more denser populations. The one good thing, I've said a lot of bad things, so let me say a good thing here, about it, the statute is that it is specific to the municipality. So the way that it works is, let's assume that right now, for instance, there's an interest in one of our industrial areas to have a live local project, and the developer wants to go to a certain height. Well, they can only go up to the greatest height within a 1 mile radius, and they can only go to the greatest intensity, again, within that same proximity.
The greatest height of what?
Of building. So for instance, if
'Cause
we're
we
talking
have-
about,
Because we have an airport tower.
so that's a wonderful point. That's a wonderful point. So another restriction also embedded in the statute is that certain areas within a 1 mile radius of an airport have height restrictions, and so those can be imposed. So you're seeing a lot of that happening in Homestead right now, where there are folks that do want to. There's a lot of development going on in that city, and some folks that are trying to use the same statute and are being impeded by height restrictions imposed by the FAA, and that are part of the statute themselves.
One problem that essentially came to mind as Councilwoman Ruano was talking, it sounds almost identical to an HOA in the sense that the town has to become an HOA. One of the hardest problems that I had to deal with on the Satori HOA was getting people to actually register their tenants and actually follow up and let the HOA know, hey, we renewed this tenant, or hey, we kicked this guy out and now we have a new lease. Now you're gonna have the time. I could easily foresee us having to hire multiple staff, create an entire department just for this, and yet we're not allowed to charge any sort of fee or offset that. All of our residents are essentially going to be subsidizing this stuff. So, one of the things I really want to cut to in this meeting at a certain point is, and I think you're going to get to it at the end about what to do. I think that your what to do is more tailored to what we can do within the existing framework. But I really want to know, I think Susanna already mentioned that there is ongoing challenges to this law and that there is maybe some litigation. I'd like to know a little bit more about who are the players, what are our options of getting involved or staying out of it and just letting, the leaves fall where they will, and seeing what options we have. I mean, we just had our workshop on legislative priorities on making this a damn legislative priority, because this is a big deal, and this is not to make it hyperbole, but this is quite literally the future of our town. It's planning. It is planning the future of our town, and I can easily foresee how this can let development get out of hand. Council member elect. There's a lot of purple in this. Yeah. Council member elect Fernandez, Council member elect Herzberg, the current candidates, myself, who recently ran, most of us heard it directly at the front doors of the residents. Overdevelopment is one of the biggest concerns in this town, and this is just a gigantic monster of welcoming overdevelopment. So I don't want to just see our options within the law. Yes, I want to see those naturally. I also want to see our options to influence the law. I'm curious to know, as a charter county, do we have some sort of ability to say, hey, it doesn't apply to us? I don't know. What do we have at our disposal? Let's unleash whatever we have in our arsenal against this, because I do believe that this law was well-intentioned. I believe this law was proposed or sponsored by Senator Calatayud, a good friend of mine from college. She is a person who cares about the people. I think that simply in drafting, there was some oversight in the unintended consequences of this law, meaning there's likely room for lobbying for amendments.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to focus on.
And before we get off the subject, I also, and Councilman Garcia, this is gonna come back to you, so I wanna give you ample time. At the end, I know that you are our representative with the League of Cities locally, with Miami-Dade County. If you can give us a quick recap, we can't be the only city, right, that's concerned about this. And I know that you've attended almost every meeting, and you're very well versed. So after the attorney's done with his remarks, and it'll give you some time to maybe do a quick outline and things that you want to cover, telling us of what's happening with the league and you know what they're doing about this. So just want to give you some time to start organizing your thoughts as well.
And not to steal Councilman Garcia's thunder, but I was recently appointed to the Miami-Dade County League of Cities Attorney Committee. Myself, the city attorney for Miami, North Miami Beach, and Miami Gardens, we comprise that committee. So we're looking forward to putting the Best Practices Act, Best Practices Symposium. We met last week with Richard Cooper about that. We're trying to figure out what is going to be the topic. So at some point, I'd like to sit and pick your brain and see what ideas you would like us to focus on for that. Going back to your point, my understanding is, and also in conversations with the other attorneys, when we were just talking about perhaps bringing back Live Local, is that there are going to be additional changes to Live Local. My understanding is that I think it's Representative Vicky Lopez has talked about a little bit some changes that she wants to bring in and moving things around in the statute. So it's an ever-changing, ever-evolving law that has a lot of legs to it and has impacted our neighboring cities in very dramatic ways. In the city of Hollywood, we're seeing areas around the boardwalk where they're trying to impose buildings that are much, much larger than the actual facade. I mean, if you ever go to the boardwalk, they're 4 or 5 story buildings. But you go to the Diplomat and it's a 20-story building, and they want to build a 20-story building there because it's within 1 mile radius, and the statute allows for that. In Wynwood, we're seeing the same thing. And Ball Harbor is involved in litigation. Next to the Ball Harbor shops, they're imposing a structure because, again, it borders with another municipality where they allow greater height. So we're seeing that happen in a lot of municipalities. Something that's very good and positive for the town of Miami Lakes is in the glitch bill. They did also allow for that when you have an area that has more than 25 residences abutted on each side, you can't have a building that is going to go to the max height within the 1 mile radius. So it does protect somewhat residents and single-family homes. Miami Lakes has a lot of single-family homes. It is really a good chunk of our populations. And we do have industries that kind of abut some of these single-family homes. So there is somewhat of a buffer and somewhat of a protection for us in that sense. So, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. It's a lot of doom and gloom. But there are some things that are beneficial to us. So Live Local Act preempts a local authority. We've discussed this. Density, height, also reduced parking. One of the things that it did in the glitch bill that really affects some of our neighboring cities like City of Miami and areas that are close to the Metro Rail is that if you have an area that is next to what is called a transportation, it's TOD, transit hub, right? A transit hub, you don't have to have parking at all. And if you're within 1 mile of a major transit center, you get to have a reduction of 20% of parking. Again, that is something that really impacts our neighboring cities, and we have to be on the lookout how that could if any, affect us in the future.
Are park and rides considered transit hubs?
Yes,
No.
they are.
They are? No, yes.
I think, no, but they are
No,
considered transit hubs.
we don't have any, but I know
Yeah, they
that
are.
we have in our master plan this idea or this concept, right, to put a
Right.
park and ride at the par 3,
At the par 3.
right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, if these are one of the things that would then allow further density, I think we have to revisit the master plan, right?
It would allow for any projects that would meet the Live Local to be able to get parking
Right, but,
reductions.
I mean, let's think this through, right?
I understand what you're saying.
It's literally in the center. The par 3, right, is literally center, and we have a master plan to put a park and ride that would theoretically, I guess, and I haven't measured it, but right, you think it's kind of a mile in one direction, a mile in the other, that would be something significant that I think we should reconsider if this, if this stuff stands, right? And I think the big if is you're finding glitch bills, and after we had one glitch bill, and we have a second glitch bill.
Oh, we're going to have several.
And that's what I'm saying.
Oh, yes.
After a while, it gets
Yeah, yeah.
glitchy, right? Like you're doing more patches to correct the issue than, and no disrespect to your colleague, and I'm saying that there seems to be a lot of people have some heartburn with this.
Oh, a lot. I mean, you've taken years and years and years of cities
Me
coming up
being
with
the
these
first
master
one.
plans, and all of a sudden the state is saying, well, we don't care about your master plan. We're going to do and allow what we want, when we want. So, yeah, it's creating a lot of havoc.
Got it. Thank you.
This is our zoning map. Susie had brought it up, our land use map. And we can see how the different zones and the purple areas where this live local could be implemented.
One just quick clarification is, we keep throwing the industrial word around. All the reds here also apply.
It includes those as well,
Okay,
correct.
just wanna make sure.
And I want to just point out that this map was not arrived at willy-nilly. This has been a map that has been worked on since before we were incorporated, because this was incorporated from the county. This has been a hard-worked map that was the initial thought process of the town is here. I know you guys don't necessarily see it, but I see it. I see the commercial centers within walking distance of all residential. I see the little parks everywhere. I see the big parks located in the right spots. There's a lot of thought behind this map. There is also all that available industrial area so that people can work in their community, that we still providing jobs and that we're providing economic development in our community. So this is the zoning map or the master plan of a thriving community that serves all purposes of its community. And I just want to put that out there because it's easy to dismiss and to say, here, why don't you take the purple and do something else with it? It's not. Anyway.
And going on what Susie said, one of the things also that's concerning, could be concerning in the future, is the pink, because the pink is our the area which is our downtown area. It's our town center area, and that area does allow for certain benefits, right? Certain parking benefits, certain height benefits to any of the landowners around, which at this time is one, but any of the areas that surround it, again, because it's 1 mile radius, can go to the max height of the areas in pink. So we could see, it could affect us in that sense in the future. Again, we discussed this municipality, and kind of dovetailing on what I just said, cannot restrict density below the highest density allowed for residential. Residential mixed use is 100 units per the acre, and a 2.5 minimum floor area ratio for mixed use qualifying developments. What that all means is that they can go and be much more intense as far as the floor area ratio of how many units they have per acre.
Yes, I was
I'll
about
just-
to say that.
Yeah, just if you
FAR
can,
is that
wait, just so I can let those that are watching online know, what Susanna's about to do is explain what the floor area ratio means, in layman's terms, so you know what that means.
And it's a very simple calculation. Actually, you take the area of the lot. So say that you have a 1 acre lot, right? 1 acre. The FAR is going to be 2 times, 2.5 in this case. You can build 2.5 times the square footage of the lot. So if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can build 2.5 of that. You can build 25,000 square feet of building. I think at one point I showed you all a presentation where you can either do either Susana or Gina. You get either short and stout, or you can tall and elegant. You don't get to maximize both FAR and square footage, but that's how we make sure that we get. She's laughing. That's how we make sure that we control development. We give you one and one of the other, and FAR is one of the ways that we control. 2.5 is quite a bit of FAR, and that's just usually is 0.7, 1.5, 1.7.
So 2.5 is very intense, very intense. City cannot restrict density below the highest density allowed for residential. City cannot restrict height below the highest commercial or residential structure within 1 mile of a proposed qualifying development.
So 7 stories in our case in most instances.
Exactly. Except, again, as I mentioned, I just want to throw that caveat, when you have a residential, single-family homes, there is an added protection within a 1-mile radius of those. What is not preempted? Okay, there's some things that are not preempted. Tree retention, that's very important in the town of Miami Lakes. So as far as our trees are concerned, that's something that we still get to protect. Stormwater management and floodplain management, again, 2 other very important infrastructures of which the town has put significant amount of money and resources at.
However, but they're not required to comply with the landscape requirements. So they don't have to put in new trees, and they don't have
No.
to, right? So they don't
But
get
they can't
to,
remove.
they can't remove trees, but they also cannot,
They
do
can't
not, do
impose
not, yeah,
landscaping.
right.
And going back to your point of things that we may want to see if we can carve out and try to impose, that would be one. That would be one. If I'm going to pick a fight,
You said that the 2.5 FAR is much more intense. What is our current FAR limit here in town?
0.7, I believe.
What is it?
I believe it's 0.7.
So if I'm reading this next slide correctly, it's not that it's 2.5, it's 1.7 times 150, or is that the same? I went to law school. and I don't do
0.7
math.
is what we allow, so it would be an increase of,
150%.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I discussed this about the missing middle tax exemption expanded. So what the middle tax exemption is that 120% of the AMI that is what's considered moderate income, that puts, you could have families at 6 figures being considered for workforce housing. And that's something, and the reason why that hurts us so badly is that, you get the workforce housing kind of component to it, the benefits, families moving in there that are making, a decent living, middle income, and they have the possibility of those units being completely exempt from property taxes, which would impact, and has a direct impact on municipalities. So that's something that is of concern.
Is there anything in this statute about prevention of, say, someone acquiring one of these low rent spaces as a tenant, and then subleasing it for a higher price? Because that would right away, I could see how this system can be abused. I could have someone as a straw man, essentially, show up and apply. I'll use them 10 times over to do all these applications. Now I'm acquiring these, I'm paying a low rent, call it a mortgage, right, for these properties, and charging a higher rent for them, and generating a profit. Now I'm abusing the system and not accomplishing the statute's purpose, and also still being a burden on the town's infrastructure. Is there anything in the statute to that?
So with regards to workforce housing as a whole, as far as workforce housing as a whole, you have to be able to apply for it and be able to meet the burden that you qualify, right? So most of these types of leases, if not all, I just want to stick my hand in the fire and say all of them, have provisions that do not allow for subleasing. However, it goes back to what we discussed. Again, that kind of puts the onus on us to have to police. Are they subletting them, or are they really keeping the workforce housing? And that's where it becomes kind of difficult. But I think you're giving ideas there to the public.
And our highest FAR in town is 1.4. Our highest FAR in town is 1.4. That is the FAR in the RO50 districts, basically the hotels.
Okay, moving right along. Transit-oriented parking, I discussed that already. For sale market units, and this is all stuff that was treated in the 2024 glitch bill. LLA zoning benefits, and this goes to what you mentioned, Councilman Morera, is that they're not allowed, there's restrictions in buildings and areas where there's height due to flight paths. So that does benefit us in some of the industrial areas that are abutting 57th Avenue and close to Opalaca. Grandfathering, one of the things that kind of also is part of the bill is that even after the 30 years has expired, these areas are able to remain as non-conforming uses. So, opt-out, this we can talk about a little bit, and I would, if we decide to develop an ordinance, I can take a look at it a little bit closer. So there is the ability to be able to opt out of the middle tax. So the middle tax is for those individuals that are in that 120 AMI bracket, and that those units could receive full exemption, tax exemption, if applied for. So there is a way to be able to back us out of that if that's something that you would want us to take a look at, and it requires a 2/3 votes of the governing body.
If there's sufficient affordable housing inventory in that area.
That too, yes, yeah.
But at least based on how it
Correct.
reads in the PowerPoint, it's our determination. So my question then is, are you aware of whether or not they've anticipated that a developer, for example, might try to challenge our findings as not true? So let's say we have enough affordable housing, but they say that's garbage, and then they start bringing out their studies and everything else. Can they challenge it? What have you learned so far about the statute in that regard if we were to opt out based on this
Yeah,
mechanism?
this is a very, very new statute. Again, this is the 2024, part of the 2024 glitch bill. So that's a wonderful question. My impression is that they would probably be able to challenge us if we were to ask for that, and it would be a developer that is looking to be able to market their workforce housing to this market sector. My other concern is I'm not sure. We would have to have a very, very good study as far as what does our affordable housing look like around the town, and whether we meet the statutory burden. So.
And we probably do.
Wait, just to be clear, Susanna, so you're saying that we probably do have sufficient affordable housing?
Actually, the town of Miami Lakes happens to be the Goldilocks of cities. We have, if you look at our census data and our demographics data from 2020 and from 2010, both times, we have people in every income bracket perfectly evenly distributed. We do have very wealthy residents, but we also have many people under the poverty line and every income bracket in between, which means that we really have residential options of all levels in the town.
Yeah, what I remember is that we have an almost perfect bell curve in many
Correct.
ways between the
Correct.
highest strata of income in the town and the lower strata.
And most
of-
important, we don't have any gaps, which means that we don't have areas of concentrated poverty, which is why you don't feel it. You don't feel like we have quote unquote poor areas. It's basically distributed throughout the town very neatly, but we do have a nicely distributed distribution of incomes in the town, which also tells you that we also have a distributed sector of housing for all those incomes.
That's a good planning. Thank you.
Also, we do have an entire development dedicated to affordable housing, Lucida. I know you all remember it. That is 178 units of affordable housing that is only and is workforce housing. So yes. So but not even counting that, because it was. I did the study before that. I did it in 2017, and in 2017 we were well supplied of all kinds of income housing.
Well, then, at least speaking for myself, I definitely would like to look into that. As I understand it, is we, as a taxing authority, can opt out of the middle, that we can opt out of them getting the exemption, right? Which means we can keep the taxes for that.
Correct.
Yeah, so obviously I would rather, us explore then whether we meet that standard so that we can go ahead and then, opt out,
To that point, there are three terms in that sentence that, for me at least, I need defining. One is taxing authority, the other is governing body, because it sounds like we're substituting Miami Lakes for both, but they're using two different terms. So I'm curious if taxing authority is Miami-Dade Property Appraisers, or is it the town of Miami Lakes? Who is it? Governing body does sound like it's the town of Miami Lakes. And then for me, just what exactly is the middle market tax exemption? I might have missed that part.
That's the what's considered moderate income, the 120 AMI.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So, but then what is the effect of us opting out? Do we're still subject to having to allow the construction of these properties on industrial and
Yeah.
commercial land.
It's kind of to protect
change
just our tax.
Yeah, it just helps us collect more revenue, but,
Yes.
okay.
So what are our options? And this is something that other municipalities have done. We can look at if we, as a municipality, want to develop our own ordinance. I've heard from some colleagues that there was a time to do this, and you had to do it before July 1st, when the 2023 statute came into effect. The 2023 was ushered in March and signed by the governor in March of 2023, but didn't go into full effect until July 1st, 2023. And then there were additional changes that were done in 2024. I've heard from a few, but I know other municipalities that have gone forward and are still looking to develop their own ordinances. So I feel comfortable in what these items are, if you want to take a look at them. One is provide for prohibited uses, provide for standards, designs, setbacks, open space requirements. Those are things that we can regulate and require, and they're already part of our code. Application submittal requirements. What are those documents that we're going to be taking a look at? How are we going to be making sure that that workforce housing component is being complied with?
Can I interrupt you for 1 sec with a
Sure.
question? If we create our own ordinance, does it apply to every development or only to these individuals that are going to come in and apply under this Live Local Act?
Well, we already have requirements for other applications, for other applicants that come before you for site plan approval. And those are listed in our code. Those could be changed at different points in times. We'd have to take a look and a close look at that, because we don't also want to ever do something that is, overhanded and can be considered some form of taking. But we are
Right,
allowed
so
to tweak those.
that's why anything, if we were to create an ordinance, it would apply to all development, not just to individuals that are.
Well, what we're focusing here on is those applications that are coming in as Live Local. And the reason why these applications are not more important, but they're very important, is that one of the graces of Live Local is that it bypasses you as a governing board. The approval is not done at a quasi-judicial level. It is done at an administrative level. So basically, Suzanne Ms. Alonso would receive the application and have to act on that application and approve that application without your direction.
And also.
Right, so
very,
the
very
answer is
important to
yes,
the
we can
residents. They don't get
create an
affected.
ordinance that is specific to these applications.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess through, Lorenzo and Susanna, have we had any developers request any site plan reviews through Live Local at this time? Are
No.
there any applications pending at this time?
No.
Has anybody requested a pre-conference
No.
for Live Local at this time?
No.
No, okay. So my understanding is
We could require it.
set forth a temporary moratorium of 6 months, which I think has already been, maybe a month has already passed by on the Live Local. If we're going to do something, it's time sensitive, right? So we're on a ticking clock, so to speak, because we can't have this in an indefinite limbo. So again, to the councils that are going to be inheriting this, you have a clock that's date certain, time certain, and while we haven't seen any applications come in right now, we don't know what the future holds, right? And you can see that this game in Tallahassee is playing out as we speak and live. So if there's any appetite to move forward, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that we have a temporary pause, but it's not a forever pause, because it can be viewed as a taking, and we want to make sure that we're respecting the rights of developers at the same time.
And I think this is a good time, a right time to have this discussion, because again, we're not affecting anybody. It's something that we're planning for the future, for when that application, finds its way to Susanna and she receives it. What are the things in place that, they're very clear. One of the new requirements too is that whatever, and that's why I feel that it's probably a good idea to do it, and now is, it requires that anything that we do, we have to post it on our webpage to make it very clear to anyone that wants to submit an application, that they understand what the policies of the town are. So what other things can we do? Reviews, professional service requirements. In other words, when we receive those plans, who's signing off on those plans? Is that an architect? Is that an engineer? Who's actually drafting those documents? And those are things that a pre-application conference.
And how are we paying for those reviews? Because we're a cost recovery town. We do not have in-house staff to do drainage reviews, to do landscape reviews, to do, I do the site plan myself, but the rest of it is really consultants that we pay out of a deposit that the developer, if they're not required to put in fees for these, then how are we paying for these reviewers?
So again, in the ordinance, you can provide for all these issues. So,
So the ordinance could allow us to recover our
Yes.
cost.
it can.
Could the ordinance allow us to recoup the audits that are part of the application process, right? I think that was one of the things that I've heard from my colleagues that we're sensitive to, that this can create another department, I think somebody said, theoretically, right? Checking, residency, checking income, I would be interested in making sure that this was net neutral to the extent possible, right? And again, I'm not going to be inheriting this. I'm appreciative that JC, you're here, and my other colleagues that are going to be living with this are here on the dais, and thank you, Councilwoman Morano, for being virtual. But that's really where my heart is making sure that you guys have the opportunity to govern, right, and make sure that we're not doing any harm to the current town infrastructure. With that being said, that would be something that would be of interest to me, and I've heard it resonate through my colleagues, cost recovery and making sure that this is ongoing, that we have a mechanism. After you get off, I'm very interested to hear what's happening between the both of you, actually, with the League of Cities.
Yep.
With this regard. But I want you to finish your presentation. But
I'm pretty much done. I just want you to understand the impact that this law has, the impact that it could have on our town. Hasn't happened yet. There's certain things that, based on the characteristics of our town, insulate us somewhat from some of these effects, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It's obviously that's something that it could affect us in the future. So if we're going to create a mechanism to shield us as much as possible, I think now would be an opportune time.
Yeah, on that point, the League of Cities Director Cooper, the 12th Annual Best Practices Conference coming up in December at the Biltmore. I know you're part of the team. The League of Cities, of course, always fights for local control, local rule, and they're totally against this. So again, working with them as we did with the blasting, we brought up the blasting, and they were very interested. I know they're already working on this with you, so I would say we continue to work with them. I know you're on the committee. You want to explain a little bit about what your scope is when it comes to that?
Well, my role as part of the attorney committee is to assist the members, which also includes, I didn't mention the city attorney also for Key Biscayne, the village attorney. So we're 5 of us, and it's just basically making sure that we're putting together the different trainings for the elected officials. We're going to have one now in November for the new incoming elected officials. Talking about lobbying, talking about public records, and so on and so forth, and also figure out what are the issues for the best practices symposium that are germane and necessary for.
Yeah, I know this is a term that they were going to address there
Yeah.
as well. But again, coming up with our ordinances along with other towns could strengthen our position. And if our ordinances are able to mitigate a lot of this, at least put us in a position to be able to have some control, right? Also, I feel that fighting this legally is the option we have to take as well, because to me this is just a blatant attempt to take control of local control once again, right? So I would love to pursue, and I know that President Cunningham talked about that as well. If there's any options in that aspect of what we can do legally as a body and as a county, right? So again, yeah, absolutely. See what they're doing, and if we can piggyback on that, and some of these ideas you came up with here, I'm sure they'll be very interested in seeing. Have you made a presentation to them? If not, we can maybe set something up.
No, but the league has been, very good in doing presentations. At the Gold Coast
Yeah.
breakfast, they had Susan Treverithian from White Sorota. She is phenomenal, and she's an expert in this area. And a lot of what I've learned, I've learned, yes, through reading, but a lot through listening to her presentations. And a lot of my colleagues are also, this is something that it's often discussed, almost discussed ad nauseum. But it's something that is so new that, when you're looking at law, right, you look at statute, you look at case law. There's a dearth of case law. It hasn't really been tried, not yet. The cases are just very new in the challenges. So this is something that the most that we can do and most we can offer is try to create some ordinances, some framework to protect our talent as much as possible and our neighboring cities as much as possible.
Have you heard from the other cities in the same vein, what they're doing, what they're trying to attempt with their ordinances when it comes to?
Which cities have drafted their own ordinances so far that you're aware of?
Bal Harbor has, I believe, City of Hollywood, City of Doral. I'm trying to think. Bal Harbor, well, I mentioned Bal Harbor already. I
Doral.
believe City of Miami is toying with one, Miami Beach. So
City of Miami is toying with one, or they passed one?
they haven't passed one
They
yet.
haven't passed one, and
No.
Miami Beach did pass it?
To my understanding, yes, they
But
have.
the ones that are for sure, Bal Harbor, Hollywood, and Doral.
Yes,
And which cities have taken?
in Hollywood.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just there was a follow-up question. Are you aware of any current litigation that municipalities are involved in that regarding this particular?
Sure, a
ordinance?
very heated one in the City of Bal Harbor for the building that's being erected next to the Bal Harbor shops.
So Bal Harbor, is filed only by the city of Bal Harbor? Have any of the other cities that are dealing with this issue joined them, or is that issue unique? Do you know any of the
No,
circumstances?
The circumstances is just based on the live local. There was a height restriction. I believe there's a neighboring municipality that has a different, and they're using the live local to raise a 20-story, building next to what are the Bal Harbor shops that are not. I think the Bal Harbor shops are 3-4
Just to
stories.
clarify, is that litigation the developer suing Bal Harbor, saying that the ordinance unreasonable goes against the live local, or is it Bal Harbor suing the state saying, hey, you've illegally preempted us?
I believe it's the city that's suing
So the city is suing the state, or the city suing the developer?
the developer.
Why
So-
would they sue the developer if they're following what what state laws are? I mean, I'm asking the lawyers on here.
Other than here in Miami-Dade County, Bal Harbor, are you aware of any other state cases that are currently happening? Would that be a better question for
There's
maybe
one in
the
Miami
Florida League of
Beach.
Cities?
No,
You know,
there's-
maybe with your follow-up with your partner organization.
There is one in Miami Beach. There's a development that's going behind the Clevelander, I believe. And again, it's a historic district, exactly, and it's going for a height that's, again, there's one also in the city of Hollywood. It's with regards to the
But
boardwalk
litigation, or these are?
litigation.
Oh, litigation, okay.
Yeah.
To be clear, that reference that you made to Bal Harbor being forced to apply the height standards of a nearby municipality, you're referring to Sunny Isles, right? Because
I think it's
that's a
Golden
huge
Beach.
difference.
Or Surfside. Surfside.
Or,
Surfside.
well, no, Surfside is
It
shorter.
abuts Bal Harbor. I'm not sure if it's that or it might be
So
Golden
I think
Beach.
it's actually to the north. It's likely Surfside has like a 12-story limit.
Right.
But to
I
the
can
north of
I can
Bal
give you
Harbor-
more information if you want me to,
Yeah,
and
I'm-
give you more
I'm just
information.
saying
But I
it's
know
pretty
that
egregious.
they're seeking some injunctive relief.
I'm just saying it's
from it.
really egregious if they are applying Sunny Isle standards in Bal Harbor, because it's a major difference. Just two quick questions. Agriculture, does the live local at all apply to agricultural zones?
Doesn't mention that's a great question, but it doesn't mention agricultural
Okay.
zones. No.
Second and more important, does live local preempt deed restrictions?
That's a wonderful question.
Because I see a workaround.
So, very interesting, and that has
Example, the property to the southeast of Satori.
okay.
Where we had the Mount Sinai a few years back.
Mhm.
One of the main things that prevented that was the deed restrictions that says what can go there. It is I have no idea what it is currently zoned as. Do you recall off the top of your head? BU1. So it falls under Live Local.
Right.
Theoretically, someone could build more residential there under Live Local.
Right.
I see this as a workaround. Now, our town historian is gone. If I recall correctly in the history of the town, prior to incorporation, most of the town was deed restricted one way or another. Are those deed restrictions still in effect throughout the town? How many of them are still around, and how many have been extinguished?
Okay, so let's talk about that. Deed restrictions have to be renewed
Yes,
within a certain period of
30
time.
years, right?
It's under the MARTA Act. If you don't, then they kind of vanish. I don't want to name names, a lot of our industrial areas have maintained these deed restrictions, okay, and a lot voluntarily, and commercial areas as well. So you're talking about two issues here of law. One is a zoning issue, of which a municipality has the right to impose. The other one is a deed restriction, which is a private right. It's a little bit different. We don't have a right to impose a deed restriction because we're not, regulate them, right? We're not privity. But zoning we do. So Live Local affects zoning. So if you do have a deed restriction, while a person may go there, a developer may be interested in an industrial property and say, hey, we want to develop this into residential, the deed restriction could prevent them from being able to do that.
Very good to know.
Of course. Well,
But it would have to be removed by presumably the property owner. But if
by
I'm
the
not
grantor.
If I'm not mistaken, though, don't some deed restrictions essentially give certain deference to, like, the governing bodies of the municipality or things
Some
of
do.
that nature?
Some do, not all.
I recall something about that. I mean, it's been a while since first.
But
year
when we're
property.
taking a look at the town, I think it's important to understand when the town most of it was developed and when we incorporated. So there wasn't a governing body per se. But one of the things that's happened, and I think that this is an important, going to what you said, because I think what you said is very important, is that at the time that we incorporated, there were many deed restrictions. But because of our incorporation, and because of our land development code, and the imposition of that land development code, there wasn't the need to enforce these deed restrictions or renew these deed restrictions by a private party. So a lot of them went away. So that could happen in the future. Industry.
Well, we're in 2024. We were incorporated in 2000, so we may still have some time to get some of these, what is it, revitalized, I believe, covenant revitalization, under
The problem is that a lot of these covenants, and we see a lot of them, we've had this issue, and I'm getting away from the main topic, but
Yes.
just you brought up the issues with, like, the townhomes and the HOAs. So the HOAs maintained those deed restrictions. HOAs went defunct, deed restrictions weren't renewed, and so now we have certain pockets in the town where there are private roads, there's private drainage, there were covenants to maintain them. Those covenants have gone away, and now how do you renew them? How do you enforce them? And so we've had some issues with that. But I think it's a very good point that you bring up, because it's something that does concern me. Right now, not so much. We have a great concern, but in the future, if those deed restrictions were to go, sideways, then it could be a concern.
The thing is that if I remember something along the lines of when you go to remove a deed restriction, not through extinguishment, but through removal or waiver or something, the adjoining property owners have to at least be notified or some, I believe in some cases, consent for a lot of these properties.
I think you're right. I'm not 100% sure on that and on what that process would be, but
Well-
not if they are extinguished or they're,
No, yeah, I don't
By-
think
by
through,
time.
through extinguishment, I don't think so. I'm talking about like removal.
you're probably right. You would have to give notice.
And at that point, isn't the town an adjoining landowner, considering it owns the roads? Not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
No? Okay.
No.
I'm just trying to lawyer this thing.
But great questions, though. It's making me think.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Garcia, Morera? Any closing remarks?
No, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to be able to really work on this project. It's interesting to me and to Susanna, and you know, we're here to serve, you know, this council. So let us know what you want us to do.
And I want to thank you particularly for bringing this up to a workshop, because you know I've been having heartburn over this for way more than a year, and I've been screaming into the wind to anybody that wanted to hear me.
Well, I think.
So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the thing that, well, first of all, I want to apologize for not hearing your screams into the wind earlier, but I think you've been extremely proactive, especially learning that you were working on this over the summer, right, and you were spending some time on it. Shows your capacity as a leader here in this community, right? You weren't told to work on this for this purpose. You were already going through this process, and I appreciate that. And I think one of the things that's very telling to me is the type of leadership that we have here that's going to be taking over the reins, right? The majority of the council's here engaged, saying, look, this is a problem. This is going to be a problem for us in the future. How do we fix this before it comes on our lap, right? And I think that's really telling to the type of work that you have here on this dais, and leverage it, right? Again, you know, I brought this issue forward because I'm concerned about the future. I'm concerned about, you know, what's happening. The glitch bills are happening because there's a lot of heartburn. I'd like to see what the lay of the land is. I don't know if I'm going to be going to the best practice conference, being that I'm on my way out, but I would encourage my colleagues, even the councilman-elect that's here, you know, take those opportunities that are put on by the League of Cities, that are put on by the Florida League of Cities as opportunities to open up your eyes, because it's different when you're on this side, right? A lot of people think, oh, look, you know, they're rubber stamping this. Here, we have absolutely zero control. We didn't bring this upon ourselves. It's been thrusted upon us, and yet here we are, right? So luckily, the good thing is we have no projects in the hopper. We have no developers that have expressed interest in this product right now. But getting ahead of it before, right, is the opportunity that we have. And I think that's important to me and the legacy that we leave behind. So I appreciate you kind of putting yourself in front of this before being asked. And that to me is important, and I want to personally thank you for that. I know we have...
and before I forget, again, big giant kudos to my intern for the summer, who was so creative and did such a beautiful job. And I know you guys weren't here when I mentioned her, but she did, Megan Casal. She's a resident of the town. She's studying architecture, and she helped with those gorgeous images and like just to do the flow. And she did all the research with me, and she was wonderful. So
yeah,
thank her.
And yeah, please thank her on our behalf. And I do not want to be rude. I see that the vice mayor has jumped on. I know it's sometimes better late than never, but I do see him on the screen. I do want to open up the floor for him to give any remarks.
Thank you, Councilman. I also wanted to express my gratitude to Susanna for really and Lorenzo for putting on the workshop and giving us all this information. It's definitely a topic that's still very much in flux. I will be attending the information session that the League of Cities is putting on shortly, and hope to continue discussing the topic in the coming months. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With no other further remarks from my colleagues and nobody else here from the public to give remarks, the workshop is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.